I just want to introduce Einar Halbig, managing partner with E3 Eco Group, which is a consultancy with deep knowledge of high-performance residential buildings. He's an energy advisor and trainer, building science expert, and lots of background working with the development of the BC Energy Step Code. And I know that from back in those days when it was the Energy Efficiency Working Group, and at the time I think it was called the Stretch Code for BC. So lots of history there. And he's also on the head of the technical committee with CHBA BC and the Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisor, KC. He's a founding member of that. So welcome, Einar. Looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thanks, Norm, and thanks everyone for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words on the topic of integrated design process, and I'll sort of carry over from some of the ideas that Ryan already mentioned, and you also see some of these comments and some of these ideas show up in the other presentations coming after mine. So this is the basic message I wanted to suggest this morning, and that it takes a high-performance design process to deliver an affordable, comfortable, healthy, sustainable, efficient, high-performance building. So you folks have recognized that this is where we're going. Obviously, we know all about step code. We know we're climbing the different steps over the next decade or so. We're going to be building more energy-efficient houses. They need to be affordable. They need to be thermally comfortable. They need to be healthy. They need to be sustainable as well as more efficient. How do you get there? You don't just get there by accident. You get there as a planned event, like probably anything in life. So it takes a high-performance design process to get us there. And that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. And this is not unlike other things in life. If you take a look at the photos down on the bottom left there, you think about your automobile. I'm an avid cyclist, so I think about the mountain bike, the modern mountain bike. It's a marvel of technology and materials and engineering, or your cell phone. Think about the amazing computing power and all the things you can do with your cell phone. You hardly use it as a phone anymore these days. These are good examples of integrated design process. They work, they're efficient, they're cool, they do lots of neat things, they're very effective, and they didn't get to that design by accident. Some people, probably a lot of people actually, especially with cars and phones, put a lot of effort into designing these things to make sure they work very well. Photo above it is our world, the construction industry, and it sort of begs the question, what are the parallels between the two worlds? Where are we at with the construction industry? And you may already be aware in terms of the productivity and how much the construction industry has progressed over the years and how productive we are. Unfortunately, we're sort of lagging down here at the bottom. Construction is this red line here that hasn't seen much of a change in terms of how effectively we're working over the years, in fact, over the decades. So I think this tells us that there's room for improvement, and perhaps what could we learn from other industries. Comes to building a house. I'm not a builder. I've done a lot of extensive renovation work on my own house, so I can relate to the ins and outs, at least a little bit, of construction. We have a lot of appreciation as energy advisors for the work that you folks do as builders. There's a lot going on with houses, a lot of things that you folks have to worry about. Energy efficiency is just part of it, but that by itself is a very complicated subject. We see here just a number of buzzwords and key ideas that can or do connect into the idea of a more energy efficient house. How does all this stuff work together? Also in an affordable manner, in a manner that respects these sustainability agendas. We're starting to hear more and more about embodied carbon, captured carbon, carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, etc. How does all this work together? And it just doesn't work together by accident. You need to have a plan to integrate all these different ideas in a way that makes sense for you, makes sense for the building, makes sense for the climate that you're building in. So that's the idea of integrated design process. It's actually meant to simplify the construction process and provide a framework to deal with all the the intricacies of construction that you folks as builders and developers have to deal with, and architects as well, and designers, and material manufacturers. They all tie into this. Same with us as energy advisors. So it's an opportunity to simplify the construction process, to provide some framework, some template, to work through the different ideas at an earlier stage in the design process, and also respecting the house as a system approach. Why would you consider IDP? Well, first of all, you're probably doing at least some of these things. Maybe not formally. Maybe you don't really think about them as your integrated design process. But builders typically already you're gathering information from your trades, your product suppliers. You're thinking about how to go last time, how is it going to go this time. As we get into a couple of slides about what the IDP format actually is, you'll recognize some of the things you already do to some capacity or another. You're already having meetings on site and maybe at your local Tim Hortons to discuss some of these things. Let's talk for a minute about why you want to do some of these things, and perhaps even look at embracing integrated design process even more. So this is where we're going. I think we can all agree on that. We're heading towards building more advanced building enclosures. They're going to be more airtight. We know that from step code. They're going to have higher insulation levels. Again, we also know that from step code. There's going to be more integration of complete insulation systems and products and materials that are designed to work together, maybe to combine barrier systems, thermal barriers and air barriers and vapor barriers or weather barriers, etc. We're moving towards more advanced windows, not just triple pane windows, but with films and with low-E coatings and more advanced technology. So we're moving in that direction, and that creates a lot of opportunities and provides many benefits. It also provides some risks. So you may be aware that as you build a building more airtight, and as you make it better insulated, that's great in terms of keeping heat energy in the house. That also means there's less heat energy to move or to escape through the building envelope, and that less heat loss means there's less potential, less ability for the envelope to dry out if it does get wet. So there's actually an increased wetting risk as you build a more energy efficient house. There's increased comfort risks. If we're not careful and not aware of a few things, we could actually make the house less comfortable, particularly when the sun's out. There's a greater overheating risk, a solar overheating risk when you build a more energy efficient house because it keeps that heat in so well. There's also a risk, it's really already happening, of oversizing heating equipment. And the risk here is dramatically oversizing heating equipment. If all of a sudden you as builders start building houses that are 2 times, 3 times more efficient, well, you may be aware that already heating equipment is typically oversized. If the heating contractors and that industry doesn't realize what you're doing to the envelope, they're going to actually be not only continually oversizing equipment, but that equipment is going to get more and more oversized. And Rob Pope will be talking more about that later on. So there's risks, and one of the reasons to look at IDP is not just to gain some benefits, but try and mitigate and hopefully avoid at least some of these risks. These are things that we don't want, the things that you see in the pictures there. More of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff. Integrated design process, I think, goes hand in hand with step code. So I opened up my presentation talking about, how are you going to get there? Surely it takes a better approach, an integrated design process to move us towards more energy efficient buildings. We know based on step code, that's exactly where we're going. So we've probably all seen this table here. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, getting us to net zero energy ready by the year 2032. So it would beg the question for any of us in the industry, builder, product supplier, trade, energy advisor, am I prepared? Do I understand what type of materials and processes and who will be involved by the year 2032 to get us all the way to step code level 5. And if you don't, or if you're not sure, consider starting to look at integrated design process. That integrated design process will help you better understand and use to your benefit or leverage what step code is. This is a lot of information on the page, and I chose this slide specifically to say step code is a lot of information. It's a lot of different numbers. Builders can, and I think should, know what these numbers actually mean, at least on a high level, and they can work with their energy advisors to get good explanations of what these numbers mean in real world terms that are easier to understand. And also, and more to the point, integrated design process can help the builders gain information on how different design ideas or elements or materials or construction processes affect these different numbers. Because in a nutshell, step code doesn't tell us how to build the house anymore. It just tells us what energy targets we need to meet. And then it begs the question, how are you going to build your house? And of all the different ways you could build a wall or a roof or install a heating system, which of the systems are the most logical fit for you based on many, many different factors that can all be evaluated through an integrated design process. When I think about step code, I automatically think about how do we make step code work for the particular builder, the particular client. And the way you do that is you start leveraging an integrated design process, which again is all about the plan, right? What is your plan to get to your step code level? Well, the suggestion is your plan should involve you starting to work on an integrated design process, learning more about what it is, how your energy advisor and other members on your team can start collaborating and working together to help get you to these step code levels in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible. Just quickly about what IDP is. Integrated design process involves 3 essentials. There's a discovery mode, basically figure out and talk about what your targets are, who's involved, what your preferences are, your must-haves, your don't go there's, a starting point. We start to establish things like this is going to be a collaborative process, and it's going to be sort of front-loading a lot of the work that you do normally stretch over later parts of the design process. It involves the second stage, benchmarking and optimization. Let's see where we're at now. Probably a lot of you are already doing this. You're working with your energy advisors. You're getting some EnerGuide rating numbers. You're getting some step code numbers calculated for particular houses you're building. You've probably seen this blower fan here in some of your houses. Your energy advisor comes out, tests the house for air tightness, reports to you, maybe even shows you where the leakage points are. I'm sure a lot of you are already in this phase, and that's fantastic because it helps you and your energy advisor and the rest of your team, including your trades, including your house designer or your architect, understand where you're at so you can better leverage where you're going. And that process comes in with the delivery of the charrette. The meetings, this could be a couple people. These days, it works very, very well online. You can share information, you can share screenshots, etc. Once we get back to normal, you'll be meeting on the site, you'll be meeting at Tim Hortons, you'll meet in maybe your office boardroom, as shown some of the pictures here, to discuss ideas and basically hash things out, but at an earlier stage in the design process so you can leverage synergies and leverage benefits better. And that leads to this slide. In a nutshell, this is what you're trying to do with integrated design process. So what do we see on this chart here? So let's start with line number 1. Line number 1, this curve here, which starts high and ends low, is the ability to have an impact on the cost and functional capabilities of the project. And that is a very high ability at the very beginning of the project when you're designing things and talking about different ideas. And that diminishes towards the end of the project as you're actually physically building things. And the exact opposite to that is line number 2, the cost of design changes. Initially, very cheap. As you get towards the end of construction, very expensive. So that already tells us that probably it makes sense to try and front load more of our design work to an earlier stage when the cost of design choices or changes are low, and we have a very high ability to impact cost and functional capabilities. And this is probably not news to you, but we're basically encouraging you to rethink this and try to adopt it. So what this means is the normal design stage process, represented by dashed line number 3, you move that to the left to line number 4. So you move that to an earlier part of the project lifespan, and you sort of front load some of that decision-making process and some of that evaluation. You're starting to leverage a bigger impact on the costs and functional capabilities, and you're starting to do that at a time when it's less expensive to make design changes. Sounds very simple, not necessarily very easy to implement, but that's where some of these tools and some of these incentives and just some of the idea of sort of the momentum of talking about some of this and realizing that this is something that should be encouraged could help the industry adopt this a little bit better. Okay, back to our first slide. The idea of this quote here takes a high-performance design process, like integrated design process, to deliver an affordable, comfortable, healthy, sustainable, efficient, high-performance building. And again, you probably use, I'm sure you recognize some of the items here in these slides you already do. You already do things like in this over on the left here, have discussions maybe with your energy advisor, maybe with your architect, maybe with some of your sub-trades or your product manufacturer reps on site talking about, what about this? How does this get installed? What's the problem over here? You're already doing that aspect of integrated design process. What you might move towards is represented here over on the right, a more of a collaborative event earlier in the design stage, earlier in the construction process, even before construction begins. So you can start talking about ideas back and forth. When you do this, there's some amazing things that happen. And some of you probably experienced that. I would encourage you to give yourself the opportunity to experience more of that. Get your energy advisor in early, get your mechanical contractor in earlier, get your framer in early, get your insulation contractor in early to discuss some of these ideas and say, guys, this is where we're going on this next project. Let's talk about how we get there. You can find an energy advisor through a few different ways. One way we recommend is through the KC website. You go to kc.ca. KC is the Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisors. There's a number of local energy advisors listed there. Also, I'll sort of reiterate quickly what Ryan mentioned. There is some help and funding available for builders who are interested in adopting an integrated design process. Here is a little blurb on a pilot offer from BC Housing on a virtual IDP facilitation, sort of going with the current times that we're in. IDP can be implemented quite well even virtually, even as we look at getting back to normal in the not too distant future. And there's an email address here if you're interested in more information on that.